Good, some lights going. Anyway, so happy to be here. Just flew in from another place doing another thing to support this amazing new filmmaker. We're really thrilled to debut this film to the world, and specifically this filmmaker, because I think she's a really important voice. So, Nailah, Jefferson, please come on in. All right, look at that. That's some standards. Thank you. All right, so we'll talk a little bit, and this is a tweetable conversation. So pull them on out, use the hashtag Vanishing Pearls and affirm AFFRM. And before we begin, I want to thank some of our Affirm supporters who are in the audience. Someone told me that Sally was here. Sally? Sally Richardson, the first Affirm leading lady. Our very first film, I Will Follow. We were like, we want to do this thing Affirm. She was like, child, what? What's Affirm? And so thank you, Sally Richardson, and Howard Barish, my producer on I Will Follow in Middle of Nowhere. Hi, Howard. Hi, Howard. Thanks for being here. And I hear that the hot new producer in town is here. Is Lena Waite here? Lena, dear white people. Everybody is coming in the summer. When's it coming, Lena? Fall. Okay, good. So anyway, Affirm community's here, Affirm family here to support you, and let's talk about your beautiful film. So tomorrow is the 4th anniversary of the spill. Since you locked pictures, some pretty major things have happened. Right. So can you kind of catch us up on what's happening with the oystermen today?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we locked picture actually in December. So that's what's exciting about this film. A lot of this stuff is very timely. And one of the interesting things that has happened is we did an interview with the Huffington Post Live yesterday, and BP had this statement that came out saying the freshwater diversions, and I hope that you all were educated enough that you get what I'm talking about. We just spoke about it in the film. The freshwater diversions are the reasons that the oysters aren't growing back. It's not dispersants. But as you can see, in December 2013, the U.S. government came out with a study saying that, in fact, dispersant and oil are the reason that eastern Louisiana oysters aren't growing back. So for BP to make this claim as recent as yesterday, when we have the true science from our U.S. government coming out saying, no, this is the reason that the oysters aren't going back, this is the reason why harvests are down 71% in Point of La Hash. It's really mind-blowing that they're still not willing to take responsibility. And I always say I think it's because they don't want to, at the end of the day, they don't want to be blamed for destroying certain parts of Louisiana's seafood industry, because it was one that was thriving for so long.
Yes. So what's happening with Byron and his family? Can you give us an update on him?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, Enclave Fisheries is out of business. Byron's brother, Stanley, he is the gentleman you saw in the film. He talked about how he began fishing in about the 8th grade. He dropped out of school. And in the film, when we left off, he was working a construction job, and he's still doing that, just picking up work here and there wherever he can find it, but nothing stable, nothing like fishing. And he was known as one of, the best captains in Point of La Hash. So unfortunately, that way of life for him is no more, and for Byron as well.
And so what is Byron doing these days?
Well, Byron was pretty smart early on. He liquidated his business, so he was able to, that's how he's been able to sustain. And he's still living between his father, living between his daughter's houses, just so he can have a place to lay his head. And he's also continuing to speak out on behalf of the community. He's truly a fighter, and he truly is kind of the kind of mayor of Point of La Hash in a way. But, it's been a long, hard fight for him. It's about 4 years now. Like we said, tomorrow's the 4-year anniversary. And so I think what we need to do is stand with these people, because they've been fighting on their own long enough.
And how can people help? I mean, it feels kind of like a bit of a helpless situation, but, what do they need, and what can people do?
Well, I think one thing that we can do is we have to demand that BP take responsibility. Again, like I said, the fact that they're still claiming that it was the state of Louisiana's fault. That's why oysters aren't growing back. If we continue to let them get away with this type of behavior, they'll never take responsibility and pay these fishermen appropriately. That's another thing. We have a couple of organizations in the state who are trying to get some of these $5,000 and $25,000 claims that fishermen were kind of forced to take because they were backed into a corner. They're trying to get those reopened so that their claims can be trued up. Those were paid out on a prediction that was a 2-year prediction, and obviously we're 4 years out. So recovery is not returned in 2 years.
This is a horrible, sad story, and yet this was a really poignant and beautiful film, I thought. One of the things that I loved about the film is learning about the sharecropping style leasing of boats and water, and all of this is something that I just had no clue about. The historical portion, can you just tell us a little bit about delving into that? I mean, were you aware of it when you started this?
No, I always say, grew up in New Orleans, my family's here.
Hey, the Jefferson.
55 miles away from Point Lahash, but I had no idea. And so when Telly Medina invited me down to meet his father-in-law, I was absolutely captivated by this town, and then to hear their history was just so interesting to me. And when I heard about mean old Leander Perez, he was known as kind of the ruler of Plaquemines Parish for over 40 years. And I thought that was interesting too, because I was always interested in history. I took Louisiana history, and I'd never heard of this man. I've heard of people like George Wallace. He was one of George Wallace's biggest supporters when he ran for president. But again, this was a history I just didn't know about. So I wanted to make sure to include it because it's so much a part of their journey. They overcame this racism. They really fought to become independent fishermen. And so I think that kind of motivated me even more to want to tell their story and to try and help them get back on their feet.
So, I mean, this is one of the things that really drew me to the film after we saw it out of Slam Dance this year, and we really, kind of acquired it with you and partnered with you to put it out very quickly because we wanted to hit this anniversary. But one of the things that I'm so kind of proud of you for, not knowing you very well, is the fact that you made this documentary with no institutional money. So these days, documentarians really have to lean on places like Ford Foundation and Tribeca and Sundance and Film Independent and institutional money to get documentaries made. That's kind of the way these days. And so it was really interesting that you just had this sole Black woman out in somewhere making and crafting and shaping this documentary on your own. So tell me a little bit about the process in terms of getting this money, and once you heard the story, determining for yourself that you were going to make it.
Right. Well, when we started the film, I actually thought I had an investor, but he dropped out about 2 months into it, but I was too deep by then. And this lovely woman sitting here, my mother, she allowed me to live in her house rent-free. So I was able to put my own money into the film for a long time. And then there are people like the gentleman sitting to her right, my uncle, who donated money, and my sister, and my brother-in-law. Yeah, and so it was able to work out that way. Oxfam America donated some money. But the final year, we actually got an investor finally, Dean Blanchard, who is the largest shrimp distributor in the U.S. He is a wealthy man, but he's someone who still hasn't been paid by BP. So, he said, well, if I'm affected and I'm someone who is pretty economically stable, I can just imagine what these people who are not as well off as me are going through. So, but that was basically our journey, getting the film made and raising money. It was a wish and a prayer, and it's all worked out, thankfully.
I love it. She just came out of the blue, like straight through the night. It's good stuff. So I'll open it up to a few questions, and then I'll ask you a couple things to close out. Any questions for Nailah Jefferson? Get them in now so you could say, I asked her a question one day back in 2014. Any questions?
How much was the so-called expert guy paid?
I'm sorry, who? Oh, Tunnel? Well, that's something that we actually had in the original cut of the film, but then we couldn't find the exact number. So I didn't want to get sued. So we didn't include it, but we do know that his institution, Texas A&M Corpus Christi, was given a donation by BP of $550,000.
And how How much are the fishermen getting individually in
Oh.
average?
Yeah, the average payout under the GCCF was $25,000 for fishermen, and that was over 50% of the fishing industry. Yeah, to last for 4 years. So.
Any other question right here? The hand up?
Yeah, no,
Mhm.
I thought you did a great job.
Thank you.
The exploration of the subject and your commitment to seeing it through. So I didn't read the handout, but I just was curious about your background as a filmmaker. You know, did you come out of nowhere, or there's a history behind you? Because I thought it was really well crafted.
Thank you very much. This is my very first film. I attended Boston University, and it's funny because when I applied, I didn't even know you could study film. I was going to be, going to journalism, but I figured that out, so I studied film, and then I entered a couple of places, California Newsreel, any probably black production company I interned there, 40 Acres and a Mule, California Newsreel, but I worked as Lee Daniels' executive assistant for a short time, and that kind of changed my mind. That's when I realized there's no rules to this game as far as independent filmmaking, and that gave me confidence to know that I could do this one day. And then I worked for a small production company in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and that gave me the opportunity to really direct and produce. The project that I was working on there unfortunately fell through. We ran out of financing, but not long after that, the spill happened, and I started my production company, and Vanishing Pearls came about. Yeah.
So pretty much out of nowhere, with some good stops along the way. A couple more questions? Got one right here in the corner?
How long did it take you to make the movie?
Oh, well, thank you for the question. You're so cute. It took me 3.5 years, about 3.5 years. And I have to say, I'm so thankful to Affirm for putting this out, because my prayer and working on the film was we wanted it to be timely. I didn't want people to be getting this information a year later. It's not as impactful. So about 3.5 years, we wrapped late, I want to say in the fall, and then we added some of the information at the end as it came out. And then it was acquired March, Mardi Gras Day. My sister, were you there? You were there? No.
Tell the story.
Well, my mom, okay.
What happened?
Well, it was a cold and rainy Mardi Gras, so that means it was a terrible day down in New Orleans. But I got a call from Tulane, wonderful Tulane Jones,